6 months ago, he married the love of his life, only to lose her in a brutal fire while she carried their child. He buried the woman who owned his soul, believing she died in his arms. Tonight, his world flips into a nightmare miracle. She is alive. She fought death for their baby girl. Someone hid her. Someone lied. His dead wife just gave birth to his daughter, and now he must uncover who tried to erase their love, because this time he will burn the world before losing her again. Welcome back to Beyond Color Stories. Hey, where are you connecting with me from today? I really want to know. So, are you ready to dive into my brother James's incredible stories, or what? I know you don't want to miss a single moment, but first, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't skip any of the amazing stories we have lined up. All right, no delays, let's jump right in and get started with the story. Robbie used to believe life only handed her heartbreaks, until Nathan stepped into her world and rewrote her destiny with gentle hands and a patient soul. Their first 6 months of marriage were the kind of bliss people wrote poems about. Lazy weekend mornings tangled in soft sheets, late-night laughter echoing through a home filled with warmth, little forehead kisses whenever she passed by him in the hallway, and the constant promise of forever in his hazel eyes. She would wake up every morning to find his arms wrapped protectively around her waist, as if even in sleep he refused to let her go. Nathan loved her loudly, proudly, and without hesitation. He brought her flowers for no reason, danced with her in the kitchen to their favorite songs, and whispered dreams of a future that sounded sweeter than any fairy tale. The world had finally given Robbie something precious, and she cherished every second of her happily ever after. But life has a terrifying way of turning heaven into hell without warning. On the morning she found out about her pregnancy, Robbie stood in front of the bathroom mirror with trembling hands pressed over her mouth, tears of joy filling her eyes as she looked at the positive test. A tiny heartbeat now lived inside her, a miracle, one she couldn't wait to gift Nathan. She imagined his reaction, those hazel eyes widening, his voice breaking in awe, his laughter mixing with tears of joy as he carried her in his arms. She spent the entire day planning the surprise, decorating a small corner of their bedroom with tiny shoes and a note that read, "Daddy, I'm on my way." Her heart fluttered every time she pictured him seeing it. She even recorded a little voice note for him to discover later, rehearsing how she'd break the news with playful excitement. Her love for Nathan and their unborn child made her glow brighter than the moonlight that evening. But happiness sometimes paints a target on the heart. As night fell, Robbie prepared dinner while humming their favorite love song, the aroma of roasted garlic and spices filling their warm kitchen. Nathan hadn't returned yet, so she lit a few candles to create their usual dreamy atmosphere. She slipped a soft hand over her belly, already protective, already full of love. Then she heard a noise outside. A loud clang like metal hitting something hard. She paused and frowned, peeking through the window. Nothing, just darkness and the distant sound of traffic. She shook it off and returned to stirring the pot, unaware that her nightmare was creeping closer with every passing second. The flame on the gas stove flickered strangely, almost dancing wildly as though a storm was brewing inside their home. Suddenly, a blast of heat surged upward. Flames whooshed to life, climbing the walls like furious beasts with uncontrollable hunger. The curtains ignited instantly, sparks flying through the air, and the fire roared louder than thunder. Robbie stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs as she screamed Nathan's name. Panic shot through her veins like lightning. She grabbed a towel, trying to smother the flames on the counter, but the heat burned her fingers and forced her to drop it. Smoke spiraled fast, thick and suffocating. She coughed violently, eyes stinging as fear swallowed her whole. The fire spread faster than any normal accident should, like someone planned this. Nathan arrived outside in that exact horrifying moment, dropping his keys when he saw bright flames clawing out the windows. He sprinted toward the front door, ramming his shoulder into it with raw desperation. "Robbie! I'm here! I'm coming!" he shouted, voice breaking with terror. But the fire answered with an explosion that shook the walls, forcing him back. He circled the house like a madman, searching for a way in, his hands already cut and bleeding from smashing windows. Inside, Rabi choked through smoke, crawling low, fiercely protecting her belly with her arms as she fought to breathe. She could hear Nathan calling her name. He was so close, she just needed to reach him. But every path to freedom was blocked by the inferno. She screamed as loud as her scorched lungs allowed. "Nathan, I'm here! Please!" Nathan tried again, this time through the back, but the ceiling began to collapse, sending down burning debris that nearly crushed him. Firefighters dragged him away, shouting that the structure was seconds from total collapse. He kicked violently, sobbing Rabi's name like a prayer, like a final goodbye. And right there, as smoke swallowed everything he loved, Kiara placed a cruel hand on his shoulder, pretending to console him while locking her evil smile deep inside. "She didn't make it," she whispered softly, planting poison in his mind. Nathan collapsed to his knees, screaming into the night, believing his heart, his wife, his baby were gone forever. But Rabi was not dead. Before the fire truly reached her, thick arms grabbed her from behind. A cloth smothered her face, stealing her voice and her breath. She fought, nails tearing skin, desperate to protect her child. But the drug was stronger than her terror. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was the glimpse of Kiara's cold, satisfied eyes watching everything from the shadows. When Rabi woke up, she was strapped to a bed in a strange clinic with no windows, an IV poisoning her veins. Panic surged through her as she tried to sit up, her stomach tightening painfully. Her baby. She begged the silent walls of the room to let her live, to let her keep her child safe. Days passed like broken nightmares. She only saw masked faces and heard whispers about inheritance and removing obstacles. She clung to her belly, promising her unborn daughter that Mama would fight. Mini cliffhanger. A guard once spoke loudly outside her door. Kiara wants results soon, and Rabi knew her time was running out. As her due date grew closer, Rabi's fear became a weapon she used to survive. She memorized every sound, every shift change, every weak lock. The moment contractions began, a stabbing pain that nearly buckled her knees, she realized this was her only chance. She ripped the IV out with shaking hands, blood staining the sheets. Heart racing, she slipped out of her restraints and stumbled through a partially open door. Down the hallway, she could hear footsteps approaching. She pressed against a wall, holding her breath, willing herself invisible. The footsteps passed. She ran, each step torturing her body, but love pushed her forward. She slammed into an emergency exit door and pushed into the cold night air. Rain poured as she fled into darkness, one hand gripping her stomach, the other reaching out blindly for salvation. Every contraction felt like her body was tearing apart, but she refused to slow down. She avoided headlights and anyone suspicious, terrified one of Kiara's men would drag her back to hell. Her hospital gown soaked through, her hair plastered to her cheeks. She kept running because stopping meant death for her and the tiny miracle fighting to be born. The city lights blurred into streaks of hope and fear. The hospital sign finally appeared in the distance like a beacon calling her home. She stumbled through the entrance, collapsing into the arms of a nurse who gasped in horror at her condition. "Help my baby, please!" Rabi cried, voice thin as a dying flame. They rushed her into a delivery room, her heart pounding against ribs that felt too fragile to contain all the pain. Nurses asked questions she couldn't answer. Where was she from? Who did this to her? Where was the father? Tears rolled from the corners of her eyes to the sheets beneath her, because Nathan Her Nathan didn't even know she was alive. Contractions grew sharper, faster, crueler. She screamed into the pillow, gripping the rails of the hospital bed, praying Kiara wouldn't find her before her baby found the world. She imagined Nathan's smile again, the one she had been so eager to see when she planned her surprise. Now she didn't know if she'd ever feel his hand in hers again, yet somewhere deep inside she held onto a fragile hope, a belief that love wouldn't abandon her now. While sweat soaked her hair and doctors prepared for emergency delivery, Rabi whispered into the chaos of beeping machines and frantic voices, "Nathan, please find us before she does." A shadow from the hallway paused outside her room, watching. Nathan never thought silence could be this loud. Since the night flames devoured his world, silence had become a roaring monster inside his head, echoing every heartbeat that did not deserve to exist. Every corner of his mansion reminded him of what he lost. Not just a woman, but the only reason he ever learned how to love. Where there was once warmth, soft lights, gentle music, her laughter like wind chimes, there was now emptiness colder than winter's bones. His expensive home was a museum of memories he could not touch. He would sit every evening at the massive dining table, a feast prepared by world-class chefs, growing cold and forgotten, his eyes locked onto the empty velvet chair across from him. That chair wasn't furniture. It was a grave. He remembered how Rabi used to swing her legs under the table, teasing him by stealing his food, grinning when he pretended to be annoyed. Now that chair stared back at him like a silent accusation. You failed to save us. And he believed it. Nathan lived his life like a man condemned to survive. He wore armor disguised as tailored suits, walked through boardrooms with the authority of a king, yet inside he was rubble. Millions respected him. Billions envied him. But no one, not one soul, saw the shattered man beneath the perfectly buttoned suit. Everyone recognized the billionaire, not the widower. The world praised him for achievements he couldn't care less about. Every success felt like an insult to the love he lost. Some nights he sat in the dark, feeling the weight of loneliness crawl into his chest, pressing so hard he felt it might crack his ribs. His staff observed him with quiet heartbreak, whispering in hallways that their CEO was breathing but not living, present but not alive. They saw how alcohol became his lullaby, how sleep was his enemy because dreams dragged him back into those flames. The nightmares never showed mercy. They made him relive the screams, the collapse of burning beams, the suffocating smoke that stole his ability to think, to act, to save. He always woke up drenched in sweat, clawing his way out of the past, his voice stuck on her name. And every single time, his hand instinctively traveled to the wallet, resting over his heart. Inside it, the edges worn soft from his constant touch, was Rabi's photo, her smile captured in a world where she still breathed. He would brush his fingers over her face in the picture like a prayer. He whispered all the things he should have said, the things he choked on while she was alive. Regret was the chain around his soul, and he willingly let it drag him. But guilt was not his only torment. The unborn child, the tiny heartbeat that once fluttered beneath Rabi's skin, remained the deepest cut. He often imagined whether their baby would have had her eyes or his nose, her laugh or his quiet nature. He had spent nights wondering if the baby would have kicked when he talked to Rabi's belly, whether he would have been a good father, whether he deserved fatherhood at all. That child existed as a phantom pain, a heartbeat he felt, but never heard. Love had given him everything, and one night of fire had taken it all away. Kiara entered his life like a shadow pretending to be light. She spoke gently, touched his hand with false sympathy, and plastered concern across her face like makeup. While he drowned in sorrow, she learned how to swim through his vulnerability. She told him lies coated in comfort, that he needed to forget, that Rabbi would want him to be happy without her, that moving on was the only way to heal. But behind her soft eyes lived greed. Greed sharp enough to stab through family bonds. She told him the fire was an accident, that fate was cruel but final. She silenced questions with clever manipulation. His grandmother saw through Chiara, her instincts warning that something about the fire didn't make sense. No remains, no medical files recovered, too many missing pieces. But whenever the old woman tried to speak, Chiara twisted her words, making her seem confused, fragile, even paranoid. She was slowly isolating Nathan from the only family who still fought for truth, waiting for the day he broke enough that she could claim his fortune piece by piece. Birthdays were the cruelest reminders of time. Nathan rejected every celebration, every attempt to honor his life when he felt his life ended long ago. He refused candles, refused wishes, refused to let people pretend there was anything left to celebrate. While the world continued spinning, Nathan stood completely still, trapped in the night that destroyed him. His grandmother cried quietly behind closed doors, begging destiny to show him mercy. But destiny seemed deaf. Until now. Sometimes, when the house got too quiet, he heard Rabbi's voice, soft, close, like she was calling him from another room. Those moments were his greatest torment, because his heart reacted before his brain could whisper the truth. Impossible. Still, he turned toward the sound every time, because love never dies, even when the person does. One stormy evening, rain smashed against his office windows with relentless fury. The sky felt angry, like it carried secrets too heavy to keep. Nathan stood before his desk, staring blankly at numbers that blurred together, his exhausted mind refusing to cooperate. Then, his phone vibrated. Unknown number. A tiny flicker of curiosity cut through the monotony. His hand hovered before he finally swiped to answer. "Mr. Nathan Hale?" The voice was uneasy, urgent, his brows pulled together. "Yes." "Who is this?" His chest tightened before he even understood why. "This is Roseland City Hospital. You're listed as an emergency contact for a personal matter." That pause, that uncertainty. It made the world freeze. Nathan's heart slammed painfully. Hospitals were nightmares. Hospitals meant loss. His knuckles turned white around the phone. "Tell me exactly what happened," he demanded, panic rising beneath his breath. "I can't explain over the phone," she replied, her voice trembling with hesitation. "But you need to come immediately." The dread hit his bones like ice. His mind raced straight to the worst possibility, his grandmother. He didn't wait for details, didn't think, didn't breathe. He grabbed his keys so fast they fell from his shaking hands the first time, then bolted toward the elevator. Chiara's voice echoed behind him, asking where he was going, but he ignored her completely. She didn't deserve answers. She didn't deserve to speak Rabbi's name, or his grandmother's. He pushed past everyone and everything, desperate to outrun whatever horrors waited at the hospital, and as he drove, the world kept throwing knives at his chest. A woman on the sidewalk with hair just like Rabbi's made his breath stutter. The reflection of headlights on wet pavement reminded him of fire truck sirens. When he stepped out of the car at the hospital, a faint scent of jasmine, her scent, wrapped around him like invisible arms. His knees almost buckled. His heart felt like it was trying to resurrect itself. Inside, the bright hospital lights stabbed into his eyes, too clean, too harsh for the chaos in his chest. Families filled the waiting area, some crying, some clinging to hope. A baby cried somewhere in the background, high-pitched and raw, and that sound alone nearly shattered him. The child he once imagined, the child he lost, screamed inside his memory. "Mr. Nathan Hale?" The nurse from the call approached gently, as though each step toward him might make him fall apart. When he nodded, she lowered her voice like she carried something dangerous. Panic flickered in her eyes, panic she tried to mask but failed. "You must stay calm," she insisted, though she was the one shaking. "Please, follow me." He moved with heavy, uneven steps, each one a battlefield against fear. The hallway seemed endless, stretching like time itself was slowing down to make him suffer longer. Doors opened and shut around him, doctors rushing past with purpose he couldn't feel. He tried to inhale, but every breath tasted like anticipation and terror. The closer they got, the more impossible breathing became. And then something hit him, a feeling, a pulse in the air. Like familiarity, like someone he once held was just around that corner waiting for him. His heartbeat faltered, then thundered. He stopped. He knew. His heart knew before the truth came. The nurse pushed open a door halfway and turned back to face him. Her lips quivered as she spoke the words that made the ground disappear beneath him. "She's alive. She needs you." The hallway fell away from Nathan the moment those words left the nurse's lips. "She's alive. She needs you." For a split second his pulse froze, then returned with a violent roar like his heart was trying to break out of his chest to run to her first. He stumbled forward, disbelief and hope wrestling inside him, his throat closing around every breath, as though each inhale was too miraculous to be real. His thoughts collided violently. The fire, the funeral with an empty coffin, the nightmares that tortured him for years. All of it suddenly cracking apart under the impossible truth that she was just beyond that door. The nurse pushed the door open fully, and the sharp scent of antiseptic rushed out, carrying with it a sound that punched straight through his soul, a woman screaming in agony. That voice he had mourned, missed, begged for in his dreams. He didn't walk, he ran. His shoes nearly slipped against the polished floor as he surged inside the room, his breath evaporating the moment his gaze landed on her. Rabi, alive, breathing, crying, fighting. Her body writhed beneath the bright surgical lights, sweat glimmering across her skin as she clutched the bed rails like they were the only anchor keeping her from drowning in pain. Her hair was a wild black halo, tangled from hours of labor, framing a face he thought belonged only to memories and framed photographs. Her eyes squeezed shut, tears streaming down, and just when he feared it was a dream, her lids snapped open, and she saw him. The world fractured and rebuilt itself in a single heartbeat. Her lips parted in shock, and a broken sob leaped out of her. "Nathan," she breathed, voice trembling with disbelief and unbearable relief. His name sounded like a prayer, dragged through flames. His legs nearly gave out. His chest felt too full, too tight, as if love itself was trying to claw its way out from where he had buried it deep within his grief. He inched closer, afraid she might vanish into smoke if he moved too fast. The room dissolved around them. Doctors, nurses, shouts. Nothing existed except the impossible resurrection in front of him. His hand rose shakily, wanting to touch her, to confirm that she wasn't a ghost. "You're alive," he whispered, each word fractured with 8 years of broken heartbeats, and reality hit him harder than any disaster ever had. But there was no time for reunion. A desperate scream ripped from Rabi's throat as a contraction slammed through her uterus. Nurses rushed, their voices sharp and urgent as they instructed her to push. Nathan jerked, stunned by what was happening. Not only was Rabi alive, she was giving birth. His mind struggled to process both miracles at once. His heart was sprinting too fast for logic to catch up. He spun toward the doctor, panic flashing in his eyes. Is she okay? What's happening?" The doctor barely spared him a glance, too focused on the arrival of life. "She's in active labor. The baby is crowning. She needs to push now." That word, baby, was a lightning strike straight to his soul. His pulse exploded. He looked at Rabi again, eyes wide as he whispered, "A baby. Our baby." The shock on his face made Rabi cry harder, pain and love tangled together in her expression. She opened her mouth to answer, but only a scream came as she pushed with every shred of strength she had left. Nathan stumbled to her side, grabbing her hand, squeezing it like he never wanted to let go again. He leaned his forehead to hers, their tears mixing between breaths. "I'm here. I'm here. I swear I'm not leaving again," he choked out, every word drenched in promise and regret. Rabi gasped for air, her voice cracking as she cried, "Kiara!" She tried to, but another contraction ripped away her ability to speak. Nathan's spine locked at the name. Kiara, that serpent he let crawl into his life. The realization hit him like a punch. This wasn't fate. This wasn't destiny. This was betrayal. Someone stole 8 years from them. Rage sparked behind his ribs, dark and violent, but he shoved it down for the moment because Rabi needed him. The truth could come later. The nurses urged again, louder this time, and Rabi screamed once more, pushing with every bone in her body shaking. Nathan's heart felt like it was being shredded. Seeing her suffering while he stood helpless tore him open. Then, a cry split the air. A sound both fragile and fierce, announcing existence with pure defiance. Nathan froze as he watched a tiny body emerge into the world, slick with newness and wrapped in a destiny neither parent imagined. The doctor lifted the newborn and for a moment, time bowed. The baby girl trembled her first breaths, then cried louder, demanding the universe acknowledge her arrival. Nathan's vision blurred with tears he didn't remember summoning. The doctor handed him the child, confident hands placing a miracle into the arms of a man who once believed he didn't deserve fatherhood. His fingers trembled as he cradled the baby against him. She was warm, real, alive. Her skin shone a beautiful brown tone, and when her tiny eyelids fluttered open, he saw Hazel, his Hazel. His heart detonated with love so fierce it hurt. "My God," he whispered, voice breaking apart completely. "She's perfect." Mini cliffhanger. He had a daughter he never got to protect, a daughter Kiara had tried to erase. Rabi sobbed with relief. Her eyes locked onto the child she fought against death to protect. Nathan leaned down so Rabi could kiss their newborn's forehead, his hand cupping Rabi's cheek with terrified tenderness, like he feared she might vanish if he blinked. "You're alive, both of you," he breathed, the words shaky and reverent. The doctor checked Rabi's bleeding, concern flickering, but Nathan didn't look away from his family. His whole world was right here in this room, after years of living inside a grave. He kissed the baby's head, and then Rabi's trembling hands, feeling his heart resurrect piece by piece. But the warmth of the moment couldn't silence the shadows creeping back into his thoughts. How long had Rabi been alone? Why didn't she contact him? Who kept her away? The truth lingered like a blade waiting to drop. Rabi tried to speak again, panic glittering in her eyes. "Nathan! She'll come. Kiara knows I'm alive. She'll take my baby," she whispered, fear strangling the edges of her voice. Nathan's jaw clenched so hard his teeth nearly cracked. He pulled Rabi and the baby closer, his voice low and lethal. "No one is taking you away again. I will burn the world before I lose you a second time." He didn't care if it sounded like a threat. It was a vow. Love had turned into a weapon inside him, and he was ready to use it. Nathan's rage was awakening, and it was aimed directly at Kiara. He looked at Rabi, really looked, the bruises on her arm, the bandaged wounds along her ribs, the terror still shaped into her features. She didn't survive the fire unscathed. She'd survived hell. Someone kept her hidden, hurt her, hunted her, and now labor had nearly taken her before the truth could reach him. Nathan gently brushed her tears away, promising softly, "You are safe now." "I'm right here," Rabi clung to his hand like it was life itself. She stared into his eyes as though memorizing him all over again. I thought you died inside the fire," she whispered, a confession born from the darkest fear. Nathan shook his head, his voice raw. "No. It was me who died. But now you brought me back." They didn't know danger was already lurking. The nurses stepped away to allow them a moment, unaware they were standing at the edge of a war. The air in the room changed. It felt charged, heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Nathan shifted, adjusting his daughter in his arms, overwhelmed by her tiny existence. She yawned, her small mouth forming the softest sound, and Nathan nearly cried again. "I missed your entire life," he whispered to her, even though she didn't understand. "But I will never miss another second." The peace was too brief to trust. Then, footsteps, slow, sharp, too familiar. A presence entered the doorway, dripping venom into the air before a single word was spoken. Nathan's grip tightened around his newborn, his instincts screaming danger. Rabi's eyes widened with terror, all the color draining from her face as she stared past Nathan's shoulder. He didn't have to turn to know who it was. The dread crawling across his spine told him. A woman's voice, cold as steel and sharp as the scalpel on the surgical tray, hissed behind them. "She shouldn't be alive." 4. The room felt suddenly smaller, air heavier, as a slow, deliberate click echoed across the polished floor. Nathan's chest tightened, every nerve firing like a warning bell, and he realized before he even turned that danger had arrived. Kiara emerged from the doorway, head high, shoulders back, her expensive heels striking the floor with deliberate rhythm. Each step a countdown to doom. Her lips curved into that wicked, knowing grin that had haunted Nathan's nightmares for months. The world seemed to freeze for a heartbeat, then bend as she sauntered closer, eyes glinting like knives sharpened with malice. "Surprised to see me?" she purred, voice silk over steel, dripping triumph. Nathan's pulse surged, fury coiled in his chest, tighter than smoke in a closed room. This was the woman who had stolen 6 months of their lives, who had set a fire that had almost killed his wife, almost robbed him of fatherhood, almost crushed his soul. And now she stood there as though the world owed her applause. Rabi's grip tightened on their daughter as the reality hit her like a physical blow. Kiara's presence didn't just threaten their safety, it threatened their very survival. Her lips twisted in amusement at Rabi's terror, eyes roaming the hospital room as if claiming it for herself. "Nathan," Kiara began, her voice dripping venom and satisfaction, "you really thought you could survive without me controlling the board, without me controlling your life, without me deciding your fate? Foolish man, everything you hold dear, your little miracle, your precious Rabi, it all came through my hands. The fire, the disappearance, all mine. Do you feel it? The fear? That's power, Nathan. That's what I've always had." Nathan's blood turned to molten rage. His fingers clenched so tightly around Rabi that she flinched, but he ignored it. Every word Kiara spoke burned like acid across memory and reality, fusing pain, anger, and disbelief. She revealed it all with the confidence of a predator gloating over its prey. The fire, the kidnapping, the lies fed to him for years. Every detail, precise, calculated, meant to wound. Nathan's roar broke the room, his voice cracked like thunder across the sterile hospital walls, every ounce of rage he had been suppressing for years exploding in one seismic moment. "You will never touch my family again." He lunged forward, body trembling, as security officers materialized like shadows behind him. He didn't care who saw his fury. He didn't care that Rabi might faint from shock or that their daughter could sense the tension. His only thought was protecting them, reclaiming what she had tried to destroy. Kiara hissed, a sound more animal than human, twisting in his grip like a cornered snake. She fought with every ounce of spite and pride, slashing at his chest, teeth bared in rage, as if the years she had lost her power were fueling every desperate strike. The nurses and hospital staff scrambled, voices rising in chaos, but Nathan's focus narrowed to one singular truth. She would not take another life from him. Rabi clutched his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve, overwhelmed by the storm finally turning in their favor. She trembled, both from relief and from the sheer force of emotions, fear, anger, and the residual pain of childbirth intertwining. For the first time in months, she allowed herself a breath that was not held in terror. Nathan's body tensed as he saw Kiara's face, twisted with the delight of her own cruelty, her arrogance blinding to the consequences of her actions. "I will come back!" Kiara screamed, her voice a curse that tried to claw into their sanctuary. "I will take everything, and I will finish what I started." "You can't escape me, Nathan. You never could." Every syllable struck like fire across his veins. Nathan's reply was immediate, raw, thunderous. "You will never touch my family again," he growled, his voice layered with every year of loss, every nightmare survived, every broken moment he had carried alone. Security officers surged forward, restraining Kiara as Nathan's fury gave her no quarter. He held Rabi and Amara close, shielding them as he turned his body into a human barricade, a living wall between past terror and present salvation. Kiara screamed and thrashed, a wild storm suddenly caged, but Nathan's eyes never left her. He knew every move, every smirk, every plan she had ever devised against them. Rabi's grip tightened, and a shiver ran down her spine. Part fear, part exhilaration, realizing the nightmare was here, but for the first time, her side was safe. Authorities arrived moments later, cuffing Kiara and dragging her toward justice she never imagined. The hospital air buzzed with adrenaline, the chaos subsiding as officers escorted her out, leaving her voice echoing warnings, curses, and promises of return. Nathan finally exhaled, a long, shuddering release, but his relief was tempered by exhaustion, both physical and emotional. He looked at Rabi, whose face was pale, eyes wide, and body trembling. Months of trauma, months of hiding, and the miracle of survival had left her fragile, delicate as a candle flame still flickering after a storm. Rabi swayed, her vision blurring as the adrenaline drained away, her body succumbing to exhaustion and the long hidden pain of captivity and childbirth. Nathan caught her immediately, holding her close as she sagged into his chest. His arms wrapped around her as though to prevent the world from ever touching her again, whispering reassurances that she barely heard through tears and trembling lips. "You're safe now," he murmured over and over, a mantra meant for both their hearts. But even as Kiara's threats faded, the room felt heavy with unfinished battles, unspoken dangers, and the lingering scent of betrayal that Kiara had left behind. Before relief could settle fully, Rabi's knees buckled completely, and her eyes fluttered shut, her body finally surrendering to the trauma it had endured. And in that moment, Nathan tightened his hold, feeling the full weight of everything, loss, love, fury, and hope, knowing that while one battle had been won, the war for their peace was only beginning. Nathan's arms burned with the effort of holding Rabi as they moved swiftly through the hospital corridors, each step weighted with a desperate urgency that left his muscles screaming in protest. The fear thrummed through him in every heartbeat, stronger than any physical strain, cutting deeper than the fire ever had. He ignored the protests of exhausted doctors and nurses who tried to intercept them, pushing past hospital staff as though sheer willpower could shield his wife from every lingering shadow of danger. Rabi's head rested lightly against his chest, her breaths shallow and rapid, a fragile rhythm that reminded him how close they had come to losing everything, and how perilously thin life had balanced in the hours after the fire. With every step toward a private room, Nathan's mind raced through every possible consequence, every threat that Kiara's presence had left hanging over them. He knew that even here, in the sanctuary of hospital walls, safety was never guaranteed, and his pulse surged in anticipation of the next disaster, however it might appear. Once inside the private room, Nathan carefully laid Rabi down onto the bed, his hands trembling, not from weakness, but from the sheer magnitude of relief and terror combined. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and jasmine, a cruel reminder of Rabbi's favorite fragrance that once filled their home with warmth, and he felt both comforted and torn by the memories it evoked. Doctors and nurses surrounded her immediately, checking vitals, adjusting blankets, inserting IV lines, each movement swift yet respectful of her delicate state. Nathan hovered, unwilling to leave her side even for a second, whispering her name as though repetition could convince reality to bend to his relief. "Rabbi, stay with me. Don't close your eyes. Please," he pleaded, gripping her hand as though tethering her to life with his own strength. Her fingers twitched against his, a sign that she was still with him, still alive, still fighting, and that tiny flicker was enough to ignite both hope and desperation within him. Hours seemed to compress into minutes as Nathan refused to release his vigil. Every shallow breath she took reverberated through his chest like a bell tolling for the life he thought he had lost. Tears traced unrestrained paths down his face as he kissed her forehead again and again, murmuring promises he had kept in his heart for months but never spoken aloud. "You will never leave me again. I cannot survive another day without you, Rabbi. I cannot. I cannot live in a world that takes you from me," he confessed, voice cracking under the weight of emotion. Rabbi's eyelids fluttered, and though she was weak, she found the strength to focus on his face, her first words not about her own pain, but about their daughter. "Amara, is she safe?" she whispered, voice hoarse, fragile, but infused with maternal determination that refused to bow even in exhaustion. Nathan's grip tightened around her hand, reassurance flowing. Through every word, every touch, "She's safe, my love. She's here. She's ours, and I will never let anything harm her again," he said, his lips brushing her hairline in a gentle promise. As Rabbi's consciousness returned, subtle movements of awareness crept across her face. Her eyes, still glazed with fatigue and lingering trauma, tracked Nathan's every expression. She took in the soft curves of his worry, the lines of exhaustion carved deep into his face from months of grief, and the tremor in his voice that revealed the depth of his fear for her. Nathan watched every twitch, every sign of life, drinking in the miracle of her presence. He spoke softly of all he had endured, revealing his guilt that had festered unchecked. "Rabbi, I thought I lost you. The fire, I couldn't save you. I failed you, failed our baby, failed us. Every day, every night I've carried that guilt like a weight that would crush me if I stopped moving. I died a little inside that night. I cannot survive losing you again." His confession poured out with the intensity of months spent in silent torment, raw and unshielded. And for the first time, Rabbi understood the true depth of the love that had endured while she was hidden, silent, fighting her own battle. Rabbi's hand trembled as she reached for his, gripping it in return with all the strength she could summon. "Nathan, love doesn't blame. Love waits," she whispered, voice soft but steady, a balm that began to ease the sharp edges of his anguish. The words wrapped around him, quiet but firm, reminding him that despite every nightmare, every lie, every attempt to rob them of their family, love had endured. Nathan's eyes glistened with tears that refused to stop as he gazed down at her, their daughter sleeping peacefully in the bassinet nearby, unaware of the war that had raged around her before she even drew her first breath. Amara's presence, tiny, innocent, alive, grounded him, making the past month's torment feel simultaneously heavier and more bearable, a paradox of grief and salvation. He leaned closer to Rabbi, whispering softly, "She completes the life I thought I buried that night. She is the heartbeat I forgot how to hear, the proof that we survived, that love survives, that we can survive." Rabi offered a weak smile, still fragile, still drained from the trauma and the pain of childbirth, yet the small curve of her lips carried an entire lifetime of unspoken relief, gratitude, and hope. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of hospital machines and the soft cooing of their daughter. Nathan brushed hair from Rabi's forehead, lips lingering on her temple, feeling a depth of love and longing that no words could contain. Each moment of eye contact stitched invisible threads between them, mending the rift that Kiara's cruelty had created. Nathan's fingers traced the lines of her hand, each small motion a silent vow that no evil, no danger, no shadow from the past would ever separate them again. Yet despite the peace settling momentarily, a tension remained, a whisper of unfinished business lingering like smoke from a fire barely extinguished. Every instinct Nathan had screamed that Kiara's reach had not fully ended, that some final strike might yet be delivered, and that constant vigilance was the only way to truly protect Rabi and Amara. Just as Nathan allowed himself a fleeting moment of relief, the door to the room opened again, and a uniformed officer stepped inside, urgency written across his face. "Sir, we received information that Kiara made one final call before she went to jail," he said, voice low but heavy with implication. Nathan's heart lurched, his mind spinning with possibilities, every muscle in his body tensed as he instinctively moved closer to Rabi, shielding her once more from the unseen threat lingering in those words. Rabi blinked at him, eyes wide with fatigue and confusion, her fragile strength tested again as fear replaced her fleeting comfort. The war was not over, Nathan realized, and even in this sanctuary, danger had not released its grip. The officer hesitated, glancing around nervously, as though the very air carried Kiara's lingering malice, before finally dropping a single sentence that made Nathan's chest tighten with dread. "She said, she's not done yet." Nathan tightened his hold on Rabi and Amara, heart pounding, rage mixing with love and fear, knowing that while the worst of the battle had passed, the storm of Kiara's final moves was only beginning, and every second counted in protecting the family that had been stolen from them and returned against all odds. The room, though filled with love, now carried the heavy tension of what was still to come, each heartbeat a drum counting down the moments before the next challenge, before their peace could truly be earned. Nathan's mind refused to rest, even as he sat beside Rabi, holding her and Amara close, each heartbeat a painful reminder of the fragility, of the safety they had finally achieved. The detective's words from earlier reverberated in his mind like a warning drum. Kiara's allies could strike at any moment, even now, when it seemed the storm had passed. Nathan's muscles coiled with the tension of a predator ready to pounce. His protective instincts surged so fiercely he felt every fiber of his being attuned to any threat that could come near his wife and daughter. Rabi stirred slightly against his chest, a weak whimper escaping her lips, and Nathan's gaze snapped toward her in instinctive panic. He pressed a kiss to her hairline, whispering that nothing would harm them again, that every shadow from their past was now powerless against his vigilance. Yet he could not completely silence the terror twisting in his chest, the realization that Kiara's vengeance had not entirely ended, that danger lurked even beyond the walls of this hospital. With careful determination, Nathan began preparing for their departure. He gathered every possession Rabi had kept with her, every small token of her life that Kiara could never destroy, packing them quietly while she held Amara, her fingers tightening around the baby's tiny body. Every time Rabi's hands trembled, Nathan wrapped his own around hers, steadying her as though his strength could erase the scars of the months she had endured in captivity. He carried them to a private exit, one used only for emergencies, as security personnel flanked them on all sides, eyes sharp and alert to every sound, every movement in the hallways that could indicate danger. Rabi's arms shook with fatigue and residual fear. Her mind replayed memories of chains, of whispered threats, of isolation, of helplessness, and every recollection drew a fresh shiver through her body. Nathan felt her tension, her panic, and held her tighter, murmuring promises that he would never let her face such terror again, that Amara and she would never know fear under his watch. Mini cliffhanger. A shadow darted across a security camera's feed, and Nathan's gut clenched, a fleeting reminder that vigilance could never waver. The journey to the mansion was tense, every second weighed down with the unspoken knowledge that Kiara's lingering influence had allies in unknown corners, ready to strike if given the slightest opportunity. Nathan's grip on the wheel was white-knuckled, his mind scanning every street, every alley, imagining threats lurking behind every turn. He glanced at Rabi and Amara in the rearview mirror, their delicate features illuminated by the passing streetlights, and his chest ached with a mixture of love and fury. Love for the family he had reclaimed, and fury for the cruelty they had endured. Amara stirred slightly, a soft whimper echoing in the confined space of the car, and Nathan's thumb brushed across her small cheek, a protective gesture that felt simultaneously ritualistic and sacred. He repeated silent prayers that the night would pass without interference, that the fortress he was building around them would hold, that the shadows of Kiara's past would not touch them again. Upon arrival at the mansion, Nathan's eyes scanned every familiar detail, assessing threats and security vulnerabilities with the precision of a man who had spent months surviving fear. Guards now patrolled in tighter formations, cameras blinked strategically at every angle, and alarms were tested repeatedly. Nathan ushered Rabi and Amara inside, making sure their entry remained undetected by the outside world. Every item of previous decor that could remind Rabi of danger was removed or destroyed, shattered memories of fear replaced by the warmth of security. He personally oversaw the creation of a nursery for Amara, soft blankets, pastel colors, and familiar toys arranged with care to evoke calm and joy rather than anxiety and dread. Rabi's eyes, misty yet beginning to shimmer with hope, scanned the room, and a tentative smile curved her lips as she whispered appreciation. Nathan returned the smile, masking the anxiety still lodged deep within his chest, and promised himself that he would protect this haven at all costs, that no external force would break the fragile peace they were beginning to rebuild. Mini cliffhanger. A subtle knock on the mansion door made Nathan freeze mid-motion, every muscle tensing as his instincts screamed that danger might have followed them. Later, they finally allowed themselves a moment of respite. Nathan laid Rabi on their bed, Amara nestled safely between them, breathing in rhythm with their parents' slowly returning calm. He pressed gentle kisses to Rabi's lips, lingering as though with each touch he could erase the memory of months of suffering. The weight of past trauma began to loosen slightly, replaced with tenderness, longing, and the quiet joy of reunion. Rabi melted into his embrace, her body finally allowing itself to relax, but her voice, soft yet trembling, broke through the fragile calm. "Nathan, do you still want us after everything?" The words carried fear, uncertainty, and the raw vulnerability of a woman who had endured captivity, loss, and terror, and Nathan's heart clenched with the awareness of how much healing remained. He pressed a kiss to her temple, tightening his hold, whispering reassurances, yet beneath it all, the shadow of lingering threats and Kiara's potential final moves lingered like a storm waiting on the horizon. Mini cliffhanger. Even in the safety of their home, Nathan's instincts flared. Every creak, every flicker of light, every whisper of the night could signal that their nightmare wasn't yet over. Nathan remained vigilant throughout the night, holding both Rabi and Amara close, a sentinel against all harm. He reflected on how fragile life had been, how quickly it had been stolen, and how precious it was now. The mansion, fortified with love, security, and intention, became more than a home. It became a symbol of resilience, survival, and determination to never allow fear to dominate their lives again. Yet in every soft sigh of relief, every warm touch shared between husband, wife, and child, a tiny knot of tension reminded Nathan that Kiara's influence still lingered. Their path to safety was not guaranteed. It was built on vigilance, courage, and unwavering love, and Nathan resolved that he would meet any shadow with the same fiery devotion he had used to reclaim them from the brink of despair. As they settled into the night, a faint sound from the mansion's outer grounds, a footstep too deliberate, too soft to be casual, made Nathan's head snap toward the window, eyes darkening with protective fury. The battle for their family's safety had only just begun. Nathan held Rabbi's face gently in his hands, the world outside dissolving into nothingness as he gazed into her tear-filled eyes, feeling the weight of 6 months' absence collapse into a single heartbeat. The faint tremor of her lips against his palms reminded him how fragile she had been, how much she had endured, and how much love had survived even in the darkest hours of separation. Every ounce of fear, grief, longing, and suppressed desire he had carried since the night the fire claimed her seemed to pour into that one gentle hold, the moment of reunion crystallizing into a lifetime of emotion. Rabbi's eyelids fluttered as she blinked away tears, her gaze searching his face as if trying to confirm that he was real, that the world had not been cruel enough to take him away as well. The trembling in her body, the softness in her eyes, and the faint hitch of her breath made Nathan feel alive in ways no power or wealth ever could. He realized that the beating of his heart, the quickened rhythm of his pulse, had always been reserved for this very moment, for her, for the family they had almost lost. He pressed his lips to hers with deliberate care, slow at first, savoring the feeling of her warmth against him, then deeper, insistent, a kiss that was both confession and promise, apology and redemption, a reclamation of the intimacy stolen from them. Rabbi clung to him as if the last 6 months had been a nightmare she was now awakening from, and Nathan marveled at the resilience she had shown, at the courage that had kept her alive and strong enough to walk back into his arms, to find hope still waiting there. A sudden knock echoed down the hospital hallway, distant yet sharp, making both of them freeze, their breaths catching, a reminder that the past was never far behind. As the night deepened, their reunion transformed into intimacy layered with desperate fire and careful tenderness. Every touch, every whisper, every gentle exploration of skin and soul was a reclamation, a way of saying, silently but insistently, that they had survived, that they were whole, that love could not be destroyed by flames, lies, or time. Nathan traced the contours of her shoulders, arms, and back, as if memorizing what he had feared lost forever, mapping the geography of her body with reverence, with gratitude that she was alive, that she had returned to him. Rabbi responded with soft murmurs, clinging to him as though their union could heal not only the body but the soul, letting herself be carried by trust and love, yet always aware, deep in the back of her mind, that danger had once stalked her and could return. The room was filled with whispered names, soft gasps, and tears that fell freely, expressions of relief and raw emotion that could not be contained, a symphony of intimacy born from suffering and hope. The sound of the baby monitor buzzed faintly in the background, a reminder that Amara's fragile safety was never far from their consciousness, that even this sanctuary had thin walls. Afterward, Rabbi lay against Nathan's chest, her sobs muffled against the fabric of his suit, releasing months of trapped fear and longing. Nathan held her, feeling the trembling of her body slowly fade as he whispered words of love and safety, promises that were more than verbal gestures, but the very core of his existence now. He admired the strength she had shown through captivity, through isolation, and through trauma, recognizing that every small movement, every shudder of relief, was proof of a resilience that matched his own desperation to protect her. Robbie's fingers found his jawline, tracing the sharp lines he had once been too distracted to notice, whispering that he had given her reason to live when all else had abandoned her. And Nathan's chest ached at the depth of that confession. Each word, each breath shared between them was a thread sewing the fabric of trust back together, a delicate construction of hope that required careful handling, yet promised immense reward. The faint sound of a door opening somewhere in the hospital corridor made both of them freeze, hearts pounding with the instinctive need to protect themselves and Amara, a silent warning that the world outside their room remained unpredictable. Nathan spoke in low, deliberate tones, not only to reassure Robbie, but to fortify himself, reminding himself that every vow he made now was a shield against the darkness that had haunted them for so long. He swore that he would be the father Amara deserved, present in every heartbeat, every milestone, every laugh, every tear, never allowing absence or fear to take his family from him again. Robbie listened, chest rising and falling with a mixture of relief, disbelief, and burgeoning hope, as the weight of her past traumas gradually lifted, replaced by the undeniable reality of safety, love, and reunion. For the first time since the fire, she believed that the world could exist beyond fear, that love could conquer even the deepest scars, and that their little family, small, fragile, and newly reclaimed, could grow stronger in the warmth of their devotion. A shadow flickered past the window blinds outside the room, a movement barely perceptible yet enough to remind them that vigilance was a necessity, that threats could appear without warning. They spoke softly through the night, untangling the threads of pain, articulating the fears that had plagued them, and planting seeds of joy and hope for the future. Nathan asked about every small detail of her months away, every hardship endured in silence, every moment she had feared she would never see him again. Robbie shared her terror, her courage, and her quiet strategies for survival, allowing Nathan to witness the depth of her intelligence and resilience. They laughed through tears, a sound that felt alien yet restorative, rediscovering the joy that had been almost erased from their lives. Every touch, glance, and whispered reassurance was a brick in the fortress they were rebuilding around their hearts, a fortress strong enough to protect them from both the lingering fear and the ever-present threats of the outside world. Amara stirred in her sleep, tiny fists clenching, reminding them both that their vigilance must extend to the smallest, most innocent life they now protected with everything they had. Finally, as dawn approached and the first light touched the edges of the hospital curtains, Nathan's gaze hardened with resolve. The intensity in his eyes reflected a decision that had been forming since the moment he found Robbie and Amara. A decision that demanded a visible, undeniable declaration of their bond, a public reaffirmation of their unbreakable connection. His fingers lingered on Robbie's temple, tracing lines of sorrow turned to hope, and he whispered with a clarity born of months of despair and longing, "We marry again, properly, tomorrow." The words, simple but profound, were both promise and prelude, sealing a vow that no fire, no lie, and no malicious force could ever sever. The soft coo of Amara, echoing in perfect harmony with the beating of their hearts, seemed to respond to Nathan's vow, yet the faint shadow moving outside the room reminded them that even in moments of complete love, danger could still linger, waiting for the smallest misstep. 8. The sun dipped low in the sky, spilling gold across the mansion garden, where roses bloomed with a fragrance that Robbie had once tended with her gentle hands. A memory of love she had poured into every petal, every stem. The garden felt alive, as if it too understood the significance of the day, a resurrection, a triumph over fire, betrayal, and months of anguish. Nathan stood at the end of the aisle, his posture tall, his gaze unwavering, though his heart thudded like a drum tuned to the rhythm of the universe, a rhythm that had led him back to this very moment. Every breath he took was heavy with gratitude and awe, the past horrors a stark contrast to the serene beauty surrounding him. Candles flickered along the short aisle, their flames whispering promises of warmth and protection, and the soft hum of music wound through the air like silk wrapping around them. A sudden rustle from the hedges made Nathan's eyes narrow instinctively. Every survival instinct still alive within him reminded him that peace could be fragile, that danger might still linger even on a day of joy. Rabi emerged, carrying Amara in her arms, the tiny life they had fought so hard to protect cradled against her chest. Her gown shimmered softly, kissed by the last rays of sunlight, the fabric hugging her form in a way that celebrated both her strength and vulnerability. She looked radiant, not because of perfection, but because of survival, because of the courage that had carried her through months of darkness. Nathan's breath caught as he took in every detail, the soft curve of her neck, the determined set of her jaw, the luminous tears glinting on her cheeks as she met his eyes. Amara stirred slightly, tiny fingers gripping Rabi's blouse, and Nathan felt a surge of protectiveness so intense it almost knocked him off balance. This child, this little miracle, was the living proof of love's endurance. One of the candles wavered violently in the sudden gust of wind, making Nathan instinctively glance around, a reminder that nature, like the past, could still surprise them. Nathan's grandmother stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly as she cupped Rabi's face, then kissed Amara's tiny cheek, tears slipping freely down her cheeks. Her eyes glimmered with joy that had been bottled for months, emotions suppressed only to spill in this moment of triumph. The old woman's blessings felt sacred, imbued with the weight of survival, heritage, and the knowledge that love had won where cruelty had tried to dominate. Nathan's chest tightened as he witnessed the generational acknowledgement of what had been reclaimed: family, love, trust, and the beginning of a future they had almost lost. In the distance, a shadow of a figure lingered by the tree line, blurred and silent, reminding Nathan that while today was joyous, vigilance had never been optional. Rabi slowly made her way down the aisle, her steps deliberate, measured, each one a victory over months of fear, over the chains that had threatened her freedom, over the fire that had once tried to erase her existence. She cradled Amara close, whispering soft assurances to the baby, promises that Nathan's heart absorbed like fuel. Every eye in the garden seemed to hold a witness of history rewritten, of love restored, and Nathan's throat tightened as he fought back tears, feeling as if the universe itself were bending in their favor, bending to heal wounds that had seemed permanent. A bird swooped low across the garden, startling Rabi and causing her to shift slightly. Nathan's protective hand on her elbow tightened, a subconscious reminder that every step forward required awareness. When Rabi reached the end of the aisle, Nathan stepped forward, taking her hands gently, feeling the warmth of her palms, the heartbeat of her life matching the rhythm of his own. Their eyes locked, and for a long moment, the world faded entirely, leaving only them, Amara, and the fragile promise of tomorrow. Nathan's voice was steady but low, carrying the weight of months of guilt, longing, and unexpressed love. I vow to protect you, to cherish you, to never let fear or darkness take you or Amara from me again. I will live for you, fight for you, and love you beyond reason, beyond time. Rabi's lips quivered as she absorbed each word, her own vow forming as a shield around their fragile hearts. I promise to trust you, to stand by your side, and to love you without fear, knowing this time nothing can tear us apart. A sudden rustle from the roses behind them made both of them glance quickly, a fleeting anxiety that reminded them that life's threats though diminished, could never fully disappear. As rings slipped onto their fingers, a symbol that had been stolen once and now returned, their hands met in a clasp that felt like an anchor in a stormy sea, steadying them both in a world that had tried to break them. The kiss that followed sealed more than just a ceremony. It sealed the resurrection of hearts, the triumph of love over fire and deception, the proof that even the deepest scars could bloom into beauty. Music played softly, the notes wrapping around them like a blanket, grounding them, comforting them, allowing the joy that had been denied for so long to fill every corner of their beings. Amara stirred in Nathan's arms, cooing softly, and he felt a full swell of fatherly love, a tide of emotion that cemented the completeness of the moment. The garden lights flickered briefly, shadows dancing across the marble pathway, as if the universe itself was reminding them that while love was victorious, life's unpredictability remained. During the slow, intimate dance, Nathan held Rabi close, forehead touching hers, eyes never leaving one another. The calm of the evening contrasted with the storm of emotions inside, months of tension, grief, and longing melting into tender warmth. He whispered softly into her ear, his words a promise and a dream. "Rabi, I want another baby someday, a big, beautiful family with you." The weight of that confession lingered in the air, filled with hope, anticipation, and the gentle acknowledgement that their love story had only just begun. A distant sound of tires on gravel reached them from the estate gate, faint but distinct, and Nathan's muscles tensed instinctively. Even in paradise, the past's shadows could never fully release their grip. The night glowed with laughter, soft conversations, and the delicate interplay of candlelight on faces brimming with hope. Family, love, and joy mingled freely, each moment a reclamation of life stolen once but now restored. Nathan and Rabi shared a quiet glance across the garden, both knowing that the battles had been won not by force alone, but by the enduring heartbeat of love, courage, and unwavering belief in each other. And as the night deepened, stars appearing one by one over the estate, they held one another close, the warmth of their bodies and hearts a defiance of all the darkness they had endured. Somewhere beyond the gates, faint movement suggested that not every threat had been extinguished, but Nathan's grip on Rabi tightened, ready to face whatever might come, because nothing could ever separate them again. 9. The morning sun spilled golden light through the grand windows of the Hale mansion, scattering warmth across a home that had once been a battlefield and was now a sanctuary. Rabi leaned into Nathan's chest, her tears soaking the tailored fabric of his suit, a symbol of the man who had fought through darkness to reclaim not just her, but their entire world. She felt his heartbeat against her ear, strong and steady, a rhythm that told her she was home, safe, and cherished in every possible way. Nathan's hands trembled slightly as he held Amara aloft, their daughter's laughter ringing like music through the halls, echoing the miracles they had both survived. She was his little miracle, the living proof that love could endure fire, betrayal, and months of torment, that it could be reborn brighter and stronger than ever. Mini cliffhanger. From the window, a faint shadow of someone passing by reminded Nathan that while they had won battles, vigilance would always remain part of their lives, yet this time he held the power to protect fully. The mansion, once a mausoleum of grief, had been transformed into a home of life, warmth, and hope. Nathan had taken every step to ensure that Rabi would never face fear again. The rooms were redesigned with soft pastels, gentle lighting, and photographs capturing their rebirth as a family. Every corner bore witness to resilience. Amara's toys scattered across the floor, the scent of fresh flowers filling the air, and a small table in the corner where Nathan kept Rabi's favorite teas, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes of thoughtfulness and devotion. Rabi wandered through the rooms with a smile that had been dormant for far too long, her fingers brushing the furniture, the walls, the windows. each touch a silent affirmation that the life she had feared lost forever was now hers to cherish. As she paused by the window, a car slowly passing by caught her attention, and for a split second the shadow of fear flitted across her mind, quickly replaced by the certainty that Nathan would never let them be threatened again. Nathan sat on the couch, pulling Ruby into his lap, her head resting against his shoulder as she inhaled deeply, grounding herself in the scent of his cologne, familiar and anchoring. Their eyes met, and he traced the lines of her face as if memorizing them for eternity. "You're my victory," he whispered, voice low but full of fervor, stronger than any fire, any lie, any shadow. "You're my forever." Ruby's lips trembled as she smiled through the tears, finally believing in the life they had built, a life that was theirs alone, unshakable, unyielding. Amara wriggled slightly, giggling, reaching for both parents, and Nathan pulled her closer, planting a kiss on the top of her tiny head. "We've built something no one can touch," he murmured, his words soft but heavy with promise. A knock on the door startled them, a reminder that even in peace the world beyond could intrude, yet Nathan's hand tightened around theirs, silently saying, "Nothing will harm us." The weeks unfolded like pages of a story rewritten with care and love. Nathan immersed himself not just in business, but in fatherhood and husbandry, discovering joy in the simple routines, reading Amara's bedtime stories aloud, holding Ruby close as she recounted dreams she had once feared sharing, and preparing breakfasts that became laughter-filled rituals. Every glance, every touch, every whispered secret became a stitch in the fabric of their healing. Ruby, in turn, reclaimed her power as a mother, as a partner, and as a woman whose life had once been stolen. She walked with confidence through the halls, her laughter ringing out like wind chimes, her gaze soft but unyielding, reflecting a soul that had been tempered in fire but never broken. One evening, a faint ringing of the phone, unfamiliar yet distant, like a reminder from the past, made Nathan pause, eyes narrowing, but Ruby's hand over his heart reassured him. They were ready for anything together. Nathan redesigned the company with a new vision: family first, empathy over greed, and honoring the resilience of the women who shaped the lives of those who worked there. Policies were rewritten to support working parents, to provide maternity support, and to champion women who had endured hardships yet emerged stronger. Every decision, every meeting, every signature Nathan laid upon paper was a tribute to Ruby's courage and the child they had fought to protect. It wasn't just business, it was a reflection of their story, a testament that love and strength could influence more than a household. It could reshape an empire. As he signed a particularly large initiative to support families, a sense of unease lingered for a fraction of a second. A reminder that while Kiara was gone, shadows sometimes left residual traces, but Nathan's resolve was absolute. Nights in the mansion became sanctuaries of intimacy, tenderness, and passion. Nathan and Ruby would share long, quiet evenings, skin against skin, whispered confessions dissolving the scars that still lingered, and laughter spilling into the bedrooms that were once filled with fear. Every kiss, every brush of fingers, every embrace rebuilt the trust stolen from them. Nathan marveled at Ruby's beauty, not just physical but the strength, courage, and resilience that radiated from her, illuminating every corner of his heart. They spoke endlessly in the stillness, dreams for the future mingling with the reality of the present, reconstructing the foundation of their family on love, trust, and shared survival. During one quiet evening, a faint noise from Amara's nursery made Nathan freeze, a reminder that vigilance would always shadow their joy, yet he smiled, knowing together they were unstoppable. Amara grew under their careful, devoted eyes, a child cradled by love and security instead of fear and uncertainty. Every giggle, every milestone, every first word was celebrated as a testament to the victories Nathan and Ruby had achieved together. Their daughter became the living embodiment of hope, proof that love could not be destroyed, that the heart's flame could never be fully extinguished. Nathan would kiss Rabbi's forehead, whispering that she was the reason they survived, the architect of their joy, the one who taught him that life, no matter how cruel, could be reclaimed. Rabbi, in return, held him close, feeling the beat of his heart against hers, a rhythmic promise that they would never be torn apart again. One afternoon, as they prepared Amara's bath, Rabbi felt a familiar flutter in her stomach, a gentle reminder that life often carried surprises that would continue to shape their story in beautiful, unexpected ways. The mansion echoed with laughter, warmth, and the soft hum of a life fully lived. Nathan and Rabbi's love had become legendary within the family, a love that endured fire, deceit, and months of separation, yet rose stronger and more luminous than ever. They danced in the living room, Amara clutched between them, their steps imperfect yet filled with harmony, their smiles radiant, reflecting victories won and lessons learned. Nathan would kiss Rabbi's lips with reverence, whispering words of devotion and dreams of children yet to come. Rabbi, eyes shimmering, would respond in kind, her laughter mingling with his, a symphony of survival, love, and fulfillment. A quiet pause in their dance made them both glance toward the window. A fleeting silhouette of a bird in flight seemed to symbolize the freedom they had fought for and secured, yet the outside world's unpredictability remained, ever present. Finally, as the evening drew close and stars began to pierce the indigo sky above the mansion, Nathan held Rabbi close, forehead resting against hers, Amara sleeping soundly between them. Every past trauma, every dark night, every ounce of fear melted into this singular moment of victory, fulfillment, and unshakable love. Nathan whispered, voice trembling but resolute, "We have everything now. Everything we fought for. You, Amara, this family. It's all mine to protect, all mine to love." Forever, Rabbi smiled softly, her own heart swelling with gratitude and anticipation. Her hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, the subtlest curve revealing the miracle they had already begun to grow together. Her eyes gleamed with unspoken joy, and her voice was a hushed caress in the darkened room. "Nathan, I think we already started on that big family." The words hung in the air like a promise, a culmination of years of pain, love, and resilience, a perfect ending to a journey reborn, a love that had never wavered, and a future unbroken, radiant and infinite. And that's where we leave today's story, my friends. Hearts racing, tears falling, and emotions soaring. Did it touch your soul? I hope it did, because stories like these remind us that love, hope, and family always find a way. If you felt every moment, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a journey like this. Share your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know how this story made you feel. Until next time, keep your hearts open, your dreams alive, and stay tuned for more unforgettable stories here on Beyond Color Stories.